Good evening, everyone. Nick Wagner Sr. here. Welcome to another live episode of the Full Potential Podcast every Sunday night. I find an amazing guest like Jen, and we sit down with them and we talk about their career journey. So Jen Oknin, I made sure I asked her to say her name correctly because I didn't want to mess that up. So Jen, welcome to the show, and thank you for making time tonight.
Thank you for having me.
I'm super excited to interview you, and we're going to hear all about your career journey from your time at General Electric, which many of my listeners probably know that name and that company, to your time now as an entrepreneur with your own business Shift into Health. And I love doing this because I love to hear everyone's individual career journeys, because I mentioned to you, everyone is so different. No one does the same thing. We all have different paths, and I interview people like yourself every Sunday night and share it on YouTube and my podcast to hopefully inspire others with your story, right? So the things that you've done well, the things that haven't gone maybe as well, and what you learned from that. And so hopefully someone listening, Jen, can listen to you and say, you know what, if Jen was able to do that, why can't I try to do that, right? Why can't I make a pivot in my career? And we're gonna dive into that pivot you made a lot as far as your move from the corporate world to being an entrepreneur. But I love to kind of start with a little bit about yourself. So
Sure.
if you met someone, Jen, at we'll say like a conference, or you're at a networking event, and someone is like, so who is Jen? Like, what do you do? How do you answer that? What's your answer?
Usually I say that I'm a enthusiastic corporate dropout, and they laugh. And then I explain that I help people live healthier and increase the size of their checkbook. And then they say, what's that mean? And then we get into a good discussion of the business and the coaching aspect.
Very interesting. I love the corporate dropout thing, and I think, and we'll obviously get into this. You had a great time at GE, and I think you learned an immense amount, which is part of the reason you're probably successful with your business today. But I just like how you call it a corporate dropout, because it's kind of I'm sure people are like, what do you mean by that, right? It's an interesting way to call yourself. So let's actually go back in time, because I like to start at the beginning, and I feel, we're all little kids at some point. And when you were a little Jen, was your dream to work at GE, in a variety of different organizations that they have, or was your dream to be an entrepreneur? Like, what did you want to do when you were a little kid? What was your dream when you grew up?
I played architect.
All right.
I had a little vinyl pink briefcase, and I had the graphed paper and the rulers, and I used to come down and sit at my desk, and I used to draw house plans, which is really funny because my husband is a entrepreneur himself, and he has a basement finishing and house remodeling business. And so now, as part of helping him, we laugh that I'm his COO. I actually do house plans and work with permitting. So I get to do a little bit of that childhood dream right now through his company.
That is really cool. And it's funny. So we didn't talk about this. I also wanted to be an architect because I had a huge passion for Legos, like a lot of little kids.
Yes.
And I was always building stuff with my Legos, and I'm like, I want to be an architect one day. So if that was a passion of yours, and you liked that, did you end up pursuing any of that from a school perspective? Like, was it your dream to go to school and be an architect, and were you good at math? Like, how did that kind of guide your journey?
No, I was not good at math. So I quickly learned that maybe that wasn't the path for me. No, I don't think, I was much younger when I was doing that. I was like 7, 8, 9, 10. And by the time you got to the point where you're trying to think about really what you want to do, I think I had put that aside. So it's a happy accident that I get to play with drafting tools and online CAD tools now. But for me, I think I struggled a lot with what do I want to be when I grow up. I never really had a great answer for that. I didn't know what I wanted to do. There was a big expectation that, you go to college, and my parents told me you can major in anything you want as long as it's not sociology or psychology, because that was like the trend then. And they're like, what, are you really going to go all the way through and be a therapist? And no, but it was the cool thing to do. So when I went to school, I chose a very practical route, and I went to get my degree in business administration with a concentration in marketing and public relations, because I thought that would just serve me very, very well. And again, I didn't know. And I think there's so much pressure on young people and people in general to figure out, what do you want to be? And at 17 years old, graduating from a small town in Bucksport, Maine, where most everybody is a blue collar paper mill worker. How would I even have the life experience to have any idea of really what I want it to be?
No, and I don't think you were alone by any means in not knowing. And I actually, I've said this. There's very few guests that I've had on here that are like, I wanted to be this when I was a kid. I went to school for that, and I am that today. And I think you occasionally hear stories of someone that wants to be a doctor that does that, or someone that wants to be a teacher, right? Maybe they have like a family of teachers and they're educators and they do that. But I agree with you. I think many people don't know, which is why I think you see a lot of students either change majors or even leave college because they really don't know what they want to do. And I think that you bring up an interesting point. How are you even going to know what was out there based off of your upbringing, which I think is really, really great point. Again, another reason why do I do this, right? Because how are people going to find out what could be if they don't hear from other people what they've done that could be? So I love that. So you went to school for business, which is I think a very broad major, but I think it usually suits people well. What was that experience like going to college? Were you said the expectation was you went to college? Did your parents go to college? Is that why the expectation was that you went?
Yes. My parents went to college, and yeah, it was a general expectation. It was the traditional, you go to college, you work hard, you get a job, you get married, you have kids, and that's the path, right? And that's what you do. And I there wasn't ever a lot of discussion about doing anything else. And hey, I graduated high school in 1991. Okay, the internet was not a thing, right? There was none of the social media. Your world, I think it was a lot more closed in. And so, especially coming from maybe a traditional blue collar / white collar upbringing, you just didn't, there wasn't a lot of room for creativity, I guess I would say, in terms of the career path. No, you're going to go to college.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to go to college.
It's, you mentioned no social media and no real internet, right? I mean, you're right. It was very different. I mean, we didn't have this. We couldn't tell stories like this. What you learned was through the news, right? The newspaper or TV or radio, and very different now. And you think about that as in your business as an entrepreneur, right? I mean, how would you even done that back then? So it is interesting how things shift. So tell me the story of how you went to school for business. Mm-hmm. How did you end up at General Electric, which is one of the most historic, brands of in the United States, right? One of our oldest and most historic brands. How did you end up at GE?
It was an accident.
Really?
It really was. I had several interviews and friends, growing up in Maine, the first city that you gravitate to is Boston, right? We're all Red Sox fans. We're all Patriots fans. And if you're going to go to the big city, that's where you go. And I had I'll be honest, I had a high school college boyfriend, and he got into an engineering program with General Electric, and I followed him to Schenectady, New York, which again was a very, very different city. And I thought, well, I felt a little rebellious, I guess. I said, look, I went through this path. I was Dean's List all the way through college. I was a cheerleader. I went to national competitions. I was a treasurer in my sorority. I mean, I was working really hard. And all of a sudden I was like, okay, there's expectation. I'm supposed to have a big job. And I was like, I don't know where I want to be yet. So what I ended up doing is I went to Schenectady, New York. The boyfriend was only supposed to be there for like a year rotational program. And I said, I'll find a job and I'll start figuring things out, right? I'll start seeing what I like. And my second week there, I got a job with Kelly Temporary Services, to the chagrin of my parents. They were not thrilled. And they went, you're going to go work for a temp agency now? I'm like, yeah, it's a great opportunity. I can work in all these different businesses, right? And so the first job I got was like an office assistant for in Albany for a government type job, filling in. And my second job, they called me in and said, "Hey, don't you know people at GE?" And I said, "Well, no, not really." And they said, "Well, we have this job that came up to be an expediter for outage parts, and I think you should go over and talk to them." And I was like, first of all, what's an expediter? And secondly, what's an outage, right? I had no idea
Yeah,
what it was.
those are both good questions. I agree.
I was like, what do you want me to do exactly? But it was GE. So I said, sure, I'll go over. And then I quickly found out what it was. I got the assignment, which was supposed to be a minimum 2-month assignment. And through the connections I made there, and because I did so well, there happened to be, this is a supply chain role, right? An outage is when you take down a gas turbine or a steam turbine and you're repairing it and you need parts. And sometimes you need emergent parts and things. And so you have to expedite it, right? So I learned what an outage was. But I did so well there that when an opening for a buyer's role came up, they asked me to interview for it. And I interviewed for it and I got it. So it ended up being a great choice to take that job at Kelly Temporary Services.
So I want to pause you there because I think you bring up a great point. And I think especially in today's economy, there's a lot of people right now looking for work, and it's a difficult time for many people. And I've heard people say exactly what your parents said, like, well, why would you want to go take a temporary job? And the reality is because a temporary job can turn into a full-time job.
Absolutely.
It's a foot in the door for a lot of people. So I just love how you shared that story. And I think it's a great point. Don't just dismiss a temp job because it's not full-time work or a contract job, whatever someone calls it, right? Don't dismiss it because it could end up turning into something more, especially to your point, if you work hard and do well, who knows what happens.
Exactly.
Interesting. So you became a buyer. So that was actually like you were now full-time at GE.
Well, actually that particular role, it was a 2-month temp assignment. And then they wanted to even try it out even more. So they offered me a more, a contract role, but with a more formalized contract. So I still didn't have the big giant meatball stamped on my arm yet, but I had a desk and I was responsible for working with 2 of our biggest international suppliers who then GE ended up actually buying. So it was a big role and big, expensive capital parts, millions of dollars. And, 2 months in, and here I am learning the basics of sourcing gas turbine parts internationally. So it was an incredible opportunity. And even though I didn't have the meatball stamped on my arm, there was no way I was going to say no to it. So it worked out very, very well.
And, I think I want to bring up another really interesting point about this experience, right? Because you worked for GE Power and Water was the division that you worked for. You didn't go to school to learn about power and water, right? I mean, you didn't, the University of Maine, you didn't learn what a gas turbine was. So how was the learning curve, and what do you attribute your success to jumping into a business you knew nothing about?
Well, GE actually did a lot of recruiting at University of Maine and Maine Maritime Academy, but for their engineering programs. And so if I had chosen to be an engineer, I would have known a lot more about how a gas turbine and a steam turbine operated. I think it's just very important, and I learned this very, very early on in this role, is that especially when you take a new assignment, you have to very, very quickly find out, okay, what's the boss, what's the stakeholder, what's the expectation, make sure you very clearly understand your goals. And then from there, who are the people? Meaning, who are the people who are in the trenches doing the job, totally respected, and they're known as the experts. Get to know those people and ask a lot of questions. And so that served me very, very well. And then because my job just wasn't buying, widgets and gaskets and nuts and bolts and screws, I actually was working with a forecasting and material planner who had, 30 years experience, who then served as a very, very strong mentor for me as I learned all the way through. And then you take the opportunity to go learn. You go tour the factory, you go sit down and you talk to an engineer, you go to lunch, you do these things. And then at the time they had a lot of online learning opportunities that were optional. And so I took advantage of those.
Yeah, no, I think those are some great points. I want to, before we continue through your GE journey, I just want to pause you on the whole idea of mentorship, because you're a coach today, which is different from a mentor.
Correct.
But how was your first mentor experience, and how did you think that kind of shaped your experience at GE? Did you have different mentors throughout your 15 plus years there?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I had different mentors all the way through, and mentors for many different things, because one person can't be everything to everybody, right?
Right,
So
right.
so the relationship with Mr. Joe Godio, I still remember him. He was incredibly well respected. He was very, very good at his job. He was kind of no nonsense, and he was able to take a wet behind the ears 21-year-old who didn't know anything about I didn't even know what any of these parts looked like, right? Let alone that they were thousands of pounds and millions of dollars potentially. So he was very patient with me, but I think the trust that you build when you perform. So you might not have the knowledge, and I would tell this to my mentees that I had later on. You might not have the knowledge, but if you've got the desire and you ask smart questions and you take good notes and you apply what you've learned and you make your commitments, lots of people are going to be willing to coach you. Lots of people are going to be willing to mentor you, especially if you deliver on what you say you're going to deliver and you prove to be a good team player.
I think that's great advice. And I love how you kind of went into it with this whole idea of growth mindset and open to learning, right? Which I think is one of the reasons you were probably successful. And I love how you also remember his name.
Oh, never forget him.
From your first job, which I mean, right? I mean, it was 20 years ago at this point. So let's talk about from there. How did you? Because this is a common question people ask. How did you find your next job, right? Because I think one thing, and we're obviously going to talk about you shifting and leaving the corporate world, but while you're in the corporate world, I was looking through your LinkedIn before this to kind of look at your career path. You probably had what, 10 jobs at GE?
Probably
I mean,
more.
It was countless, right?
Yeah.
My question for you, because this is a common thing that people ask, you're at a Fortune 15 company with literally hundreds of thousands of people, multiple divisions. How do you find your next job when you're at a company that size? Like, what was your secret? Because you kept getting new roles or new opportunities. How did you do it?
Yeah. Well, a 30-second segue to that is I ended up only staying in Schenectady, New York, 10 months. And I ended up leaving that contractor role and leaving GE entirely and going to work for a company called MBNA America, which is now Bank of America, back in Maine, because there were tremendous growth opportunities and it was a real assignment and it was more finance, more business type role. And I ended up doing very well. And I went from a phone rep who was calling people who signed up for credit cards, at the football game to get the free t-shirt, calling them up and reminding them they got the credit card and telling them all the stuff about it and asking to transfer balances. I did that and I worked my way all the way up to a section manager. And then, so I did that for 3 years and I really loved it. I was in Camden, Maine. If you want to Google Camden, Maine and look at how beautiful the harbor is there, you'll understand why I wanted to move back. It was wonderful. And I had a great experience. But I was unhappy there because, okay, I love Maine, but I'm back in Maine and it's still small town and I wasn't having the type of experiences I wanted to happen. And so I happened to go on vacation with some girlfriends in Florida and I came back and there was a message on my phone from my roommate. Again, no cell phones, remember. This is no cell phone time. So the answering machine in the message was, Jen, somebody named Hank Berard called. He wants you to move to Atlanta and come back to GE. I was like, wow. Hank was my last boss in Schenectady. And I called him up the next day and it turned out that GE was opening an energy services business division, part of Power and Water, and they were moving to Atlanta. And a lot of the people in New York didn't want to move because they lived in Schenectady, New York, upstate New York, their whole lives. They did not want to pick up and move south. So they asked me to come back because I had been a buyer. I knew all the systems. I knew everything. I said, would you please come? And I said, is this a full-time role? And they said, no. And I said, let me update you on what I'm doing right now. I said, I've worked my way up from a phone rep to I'm running a section and I'm closing down a whole telecenter at night, 4 days a week. And I have a team of 18 people and I'm doing all this. And you want me to come back to GE, uproot my life to be a contractor? And they said, well, Jen, here's the deal. We really need you. If you come back and do this for 6 months and take this contractor role and you come down in July, I promise you that by the start of January in the new year, you will be in a full-time GE role. I promise I will help you get one. And I thought about it and it was a very pivotal move because My whole family was in Maine. My older sister was starting to have children, beautiful nieces, right? Little babies running around, toddlers. It was so much fun. And if I made the choice to leave Maine to go to Atlanta, I would miss a lot, but I
Right.
would gain a lot. And I remember speaking to my parents again, and they say, wait a minute, you're going to leave for a contract role again. They're like, I thought we were over this, right? So I made the decision to go, strangely enough, because something my mother had said to me when I was in high school, because she had gone down to Atlanta for a conference and she came back and she said, Jenny, I really loved Atlanta and I see you living there. It's a vibrant city. It's beautiful. There's things going on. I really see you there. I see it fitting your personality. And so I reminded my mother that she had said that to me.
That's
she's
funny.
like, oh yeah, that was really helpful. And within 2 weeks, I had made the decision to go and take the leap of faith that I would get that full-time role. And as it turns out, it was a great leap because I helped set up the whole department. I helped train all the new buyers. I was there. And then I ended up getting my first full-time GE stamped position as a steam turbine pricing analyst 6 months later. Again, a role I knew nothing about, but it was full-time GE and everybody was convinced, no, you can totally do it. You were a buyer, now you're going to be pricing. It's just the opposite side of the equation, which is a very, very simplified way of putting it. But okay, I said yes, so it worked.
So you made this, so that, yeah, I mean, this is a big life change. After the 6 months and you became the full-time GE employee, at that point, do you think your parents were happy? Were they satisfied then?
Yeah. And they've been very, very happy ever since. But and they love Atlanta, so it's a good thing. But to your original question as to how you get roles after this, the model then at GE and the performance model that they went for is basically they believed in shorter rotations and shorter promotional opportunities, meaning depth of service in a role could be anywhere from say 12 to 18 months before you were considered eligible to post for another position. And at that time, there was so much going on because it was a new division that if you were a hard worker, up and comer, ready to do new things, you had a great reputation, then you were plucked. You were basically, people came to you and said, Jen, I've got this new opportunity. I'm trying to do this. I talked to your boss. They said they released you. I really want you to do that. So my next, say, 8 years was all about roles were coming to me. I was very grateful for it. And I kept getting increasing responsibilities, some very, very challenging assignments. And that's how it happened. And it was because of my reputation, how I worked hard. I was a team player. I'm very operationally process minded, which ended up at that, and building teams ended up really being my skill set. So when you have that and you're working in a brand new division where everything that they're trying to do is new, somebody with those skill sets was very much in demand. So I was very, very fortunate.
Interesting. So yeah. I want to ask this question because, and I think I know the answer, but did you have a passion for power and water at this point? Not like using it in life, right? We all love power and water. I love
power and water. I just had a drink.
I mean, did you wake up excited to go to work every day?
That's a really great question. I was always very enthusiastic about my work. And I really let it all consume me. So when I did something, I was all in. And that, of course, actually led to some problems later on. But I was always dedicated to the team and to the job and to the people and to the goal and getting it done. I was a top achiever. I would achieve. Was I passionate about power and water? No. I mean, I knew I was always kind of more back end. There was only 2 roles where I was more front end customer facing. So I was kind of more back end. And so I was all about helping my people who were helping the customer, and these are big projects. I mean, when you do gas turbine installations or you have big service contracts, I mean, this is at the time, that business was doing incredibly well, and it was a big, big cash cow for GE, and so it was a big deal. So I was passionate about that. Whether I was passionate about how a gas turbine worked, no.
Okay. So there was. I want to talk about the next, I think, pivotal point in your career. You actually left Atlanta and went back to New England for a few years.
Yeah.
I think it was around a little over 3. So, and it was for another opportunity with GE, but how was that, how is that going back to almost home, right? I mean, not, you weren't in Maine, but you were in the Boston area. How is it going back home? And did you go back home to be closer to family, for work, a little bit of both? What was your thought? Because I think that's another common
Yeah.
question that people often ask is, should I uproot my life again?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big deal. But I wasn't married and I didn't have kids. I had a cat. She's very mobile. She traveled more than most people. So it ended up being the GM of one of the businesses I was working for had taken another role, and she had moved and she was looking for good people. And she's like, Jen, moved to Boston. I know you're from Maine. I'm putting together this whole new thing. I want to create a Salesforce effectiveness team. I want you to lead it. Will you come to Boston and help me do this? And at the time, my significant other was traveling full time on GE corporate audit staff. So it was less critical for me to be in Atlanta. And it just seemed like a no-brainer. It was a great opportunity. So there was a lot of road trip miles between Boston and Maine for me and my family to be able to just decide to get in the truck, Friday night and drive north to see my family. Was it was fun, and it was a luxury, right? Not having to fly home. So I really enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy the weather, so I didn't last very long. After about 18 months, I told my sister, it was like February and March, and it was like still cold, it's still freezing. I'm like, when does it end? When does winter end? I've forgotten it was like this. So I actually ended up finishing that job, but I had moved back to Atlanta and they let me do it remotely because my whole team was remote. So at the time I had proven myself, and they're like, sure. And this was way before, remote work became a thing. So
Yeah.
Boston was a great interlude. I learned a lot. It was very customer facing. It was my first real direct supporting sales type role in terms of sales processes, learning CRM systems, learning about sales funnels, all that. And it was sales education, training, product training. It was fabulous. I loved the role. And it was a global role. So I was supporting, Europe, Asia, and Americas. And I had people in each region supporting those salespeople. And it was a blast. I loved it. It was also very hard, though. It was very hard, very challenging, because I had, talk about knowing your stakeholders. I had one direct boss that I reported to, but I had 3 regional sales leaders, right? And then their GMs, and each of their sales force and their customer bases had totally different goals at the time. So I think that was maybe one of my toughest roles, and the one where I'm not going to say I failed, but I wasn't as successful as I could have been, because I didn't manage upward properly. That's what that role taught me, is how do you manage upward properly when you have multiple competing priorities coming at you and you're only one person with one team. I said yes to too much, and it ended up just being incredibly difficult. And I was actually very glad to leave that role.
Yeah, no, I mean, and you kind of beat me to it. I always, I think you learn just as much, if not more, from what doesn't go well with roles as the roles that do go well. And I think you just shared some good advice. So I know that you started your own business officially in like the 2014 timeframe, but as you were finishing up this role and moving into your last role at GE, at what point did you start thinking to yourself, I'm just not completely satisfied with my career, and I think I eventually want to work for myself? Like, how long before you actually said, you know what, I'm starting this business, did you start thinking about it?
I think in life, there's planning things out, and then there are situations and opportunities that present themselves to you. And for me, this was one of those things where something was presented. So at 40 years of age, I'm a tiny person. You can't tell on this, but I'm only 5'2", and I'm tiny framed. And after, 15 years of running around the globe and happy hours and corporate travel and doing this and that, and not really taking care of myself, I was prepping to meet for my last big role in supply chain, and it was a service center role. I was preparing to fly to Florence, Italy, to meet my global team. and I couldn't fit into any of my clothes. And I looked in the mirror and said, how did this happen? I gained like 20, 25 pounds. And it was terrible. I think many women can relate with this, but it was terrible. I had to go shopping for new clothes to my trip. It ended up being an amazing trip. My team loved me. We had, new manager orientation. How do you not, right? Your boss flies you to Italy, to Florence, for a week. It's not a bad thing to get team goodwill going on the right foot. But I still don't really like to look at those pictures because I was so heavy for me. And I came back and I immediately started to look for ways to lose weight. And I was just realizing that I was not very balanced as a person. I was all into work. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that GE is an incredibly competitive company to work for with incredibly high expectations. And oftentimes, especially earlier on in my career, I was the only woman at the table. And I didn't really think a lot about it, but I think I sensed the pressure that was on me to perform. And all of that pressure and all of that focus and taking very demanding roles, huge system implementations where you're basically working your life away for a year, right? With no vacations and no breaks, it took a toll. And as I started to try and find ways to lose weight and nothing was happening, because at 40 years of age, your body starts to, become a little bit of a stranger to you. The things that worked before when you're in your teens and 20s trying to lose weight do not work when you're 40. I realized I had to switch things out. And I had to take a hard look at what I was doing and how I was spending my time and who I was spending it with, and really try and be healthier. Mind, body, soul, whatever. And so it took me a really, really long time, like 18 months, and I was working really hard. My best friend I had a breakup from the GE guy that I had spent a lot of time with. We were engaged, we never got married. We just kind of grew up together in GE, and then we grew apart, and these things happen. And I was sitting with my best friend from college. She's like, okay, seriously, we're going to do something different. We're going to go run a marathon together. I'm like, what? She's like, yes. Because her husband actually works for a company called Marathon Tours out of Boston. They're amazing. And it's basically, they set up marathon trips for people, right? And so she said, we're going to do the Reykjavik, Iceland trip. Okay. So I was doing everything I could to try and lose weight. I even did that marathon. It was an amazing experience. If you've never been to Reykjavik, Iceland, I totally think everybody should put it on their bucket list. It's like going to another planet. It's so beautiful between waterfalls and glaciers and everything. But I didn't lose any weight.
But you did the marathon.
I did the marathon, and it was wonderful. But I didn't lose any weight, and that was the part of the purpose, right? There was immense satisfaction in doing the marathon, and there was a lot of mental discipline that went in. But to do all that running and to not really feel anything change, and to still be really tired, and to have trouble focusing and have brain fog and all that stuff, it was very, very difficult. So I was out with friends and my now husband, and I met a woman, and she just, when you look at people sometimes and you see them across and you might not even speak to them, but you look at them and go, wow, they've really got it all together. I mean, she just looked great. She looked happy. She had all this kind of energy aura around her. And I'm feeling like a hot mess. I'm gonna be honest. I was feeling like a hot mess. I'm like, what is she doing? And I want some of that. How do I get it? So right. I stalked her on Facebook. I said, well, she doesn't look like a crazy person. She's got all these nice, healthy posts. And I called her up and or messaged her or whatever. And we got on the phone, and I signed up to work with her for a month and got one of her systems. And I had a mind-blowing experience. Within 5 days, I was feeling better. I had been the original run on Dunkin' kind of girl, addicted to Diet Coke. I got off all of that stuff. Just feeling so much better, like feeling awake and alive and alert for the first time in years. And I lost like 16 pounds, like 4 pounds a week, 16 pounds. And I've been trying to lose like 20 pounds for 18 months. And I was like, what is happening? And it was healthy, and I wasn't hangry, and I wasn't irritable, which is something that you got to watch out for, right?
Right.
So it felt amazing. And then I just kept on the program, and I just went back to work, right? And everybody noticed, and I just had like this newfound lease for life. And I felt really great. But then I started noticing all these people that are in these coaching groups that I'm joining people who are kind of doing it full-time or part-time, and they all look so happy, and they're all talking about personal development things, and they're talking about gratitude. But be honest, I didn't hear a lot of discussions about gratitude and being grateful for things as I'm walking around the halls of GE. It just wasn't something we talked about. And so you all of a sudden find yourself surrounded by a completely different, I don't want to say type of people, but people with a completely different way of approaching and thinking about life.
Right. Different mindset.
Yes. And I was looking for that because I didn't want to slide back into the behavior that I had before, where I was really constantly working a lot. I had stopped really taking vacations. I wasn't seeing my family. My first relationship didn't work out. I'm 40. I have no kids. I have no husband. Oh, what's going to happen, right? So I wanted my new relationship to really work out. And I wanted to understand, how I could really be a better person, more fulfilled, right? More balanced. And meeting all these people and seeing that they seem to have that magic secret sauce that I was looking for, it made me intrigued enough to start looking into the business opportunity. And that's when I really started considering it. So it was probably after a year I started the program that I really became more serious about it. I was dabbling before,
And this epiphany, we'll go back to your moment when you were going to get ready to go to Italy and you didn't fit in the clothes. That was the first time you'd really thought about like your health and your lifestyle and your well-being. Like it kind of just hit you.
Yeah.
See,
it did.
I just find that really interesting because I think this situation you just explained, Jen, actually happens to people quite a lot. And I think you kind of go one of two ways. You either do what you did and you're like, you know what, I got to make a change, and you try things and you eventually find something and it works, right? Or you try things for a few months, nothing works. Try things for a few months, nothing works, and you just give up and you go back to the way it was, and you kind of stay in the rut, right? So
yeah,
I think it's really interesting that you were able to, through trial and error, right? And because you mentioned you tried many different things, eventually found something that worked. So you're introduced to this, like this, I
program.
guess you mentioned it was a program. At what point was it during like the conversations with all the like the full-time coaches and in these coaching groups that you realized, wow, I might actually be interested in doing this full time? Like that was when you realized that maybe this is time to make a change.
I'd like to say that it was as thoughtful as that.
Okay. All right.
But I will tell you a little bit about my personality. I tend to make quick decisions. I'm not saying that's a good way to do it, but I don't like to waver on things because I think you waste a lot of time and you waste a lot of momentum that way. So if you look at something and there's, little risk and high potential for reward, or maybe there is some risk, but it feels good, it's palatable, then you should go for it, right? You should go for it. So in fact, I don't know, you asked me, I was prepped with a quote. So this is kind of the perfect time to say this. So Eckhart Tolle,
Sure.
he's about being present, and he's big on meditation and things. And he says, surrender to what is. Say yes to life and see how life suddenly starts working for you rather than against you. So I'm a person that tends to say yes when opportunities come up, and that served me very, very well in my career.
Right.
But I had to start saying yes to myself. And sit back and say, instead of what does the company want, what does the boss want, well, what does Jen want? Because
and you hadn't been doing that.
Jen was so busy running around trying to get things done, do a great job, that she never once asked the question, what does Jen want? I didn't. And so then seeing these people who, again, they're so in tune. I think personal development is a huge thing now, but 7 years ago for me, it was not. And I wasn't into that. And I was barely on social media, which seems so strange now. But the moment when I knew I could do this, because I was dabbling for a while, you find something that works and you like it and you just kind of tell people, right? Whether it's a restaurant or a movie or whatever. And so, losing 16 pounds in a month and feeling great, what do? I'm a woman. I tell my mother and I tell my best friend, right? Oh my gosh, you have to try this stuff. I feel amazing, right? But it kind of ended that way. And then I had a couple other friends that would do it, and then I'd get a couple cash referral bonuses. I'd be like, oh yeah, that's nice, because I was making good 6-figure money at GE. So it didn't really dawn on me that all of a sudden I had this nice little bank of money that's happening. And I'm like, where did this come from? So I ended up going, they had an event in Atlanta, and it was called University in Action. And one of the top trainers, sales trainers, network marketing trainers, whatever, was running it. And the woman who enrolled me and some of the team and some of the people that I had met online were all going to be there. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go. I'm going to check it out. And I was very, all right, I'm going to keep it real. I was very arrogant about it. Okay. Because I was like, I work at GE. Time, right? Look, let's not talk about what GE now and stock price and all that stuff at times. I work at GE, the big job, you know.
Right.
This isn't going to be real. It's going to be some rinky dinky thing. I'm going to be in a little conference room and I'm going to like flee screaming in like 3 hours, right? So I went in with an attitude, big time. And I'm so embarrassed when I think about it now, for someone who was trying to have an open mind and evaluate an opportunity, about how closed-minded I was about it, that this couldn't possibly be for me, right? It was terrible.
Let's pause there, right? I mean,
yeah.
So why do you think you felt that way? I mean, what was it? What was the reason?
It's because there is such a stigma. There are so many negative, entrenched beliefs about network marketing. Yes, people listening, I am a network marketer. So there is so many negative stories about it. It's illegal. It's a pyramid scheme. It's this, it's that. And deciding that I was actually going to check this out for real, it was something I was kind of embarrassed about. And I didn't really want to tell anybody. And when you look around and I think, because I talk to people all the time about network marketing now, and I see their attitude and their perceptions, and I recognize it because I had it in myself.
Right.
Is the fact that I think sometimes people think network marketing is so easy, right? Jen, what are you going to do? You're going to sell shakes out of your trunk. You're going to do this. You're just going to, every housewife in America is trying to sell something online right now. There's just such a negativity about it. And I think there's an arrogance because it's perceived that there's a procedure that it's too easy. There's nothing really technically challenging about it. It's not really a professional way to do anything. So therefore, if you are a global leader of General Electric Corporation making a high six-figure salary, why would you ever consider doing something like that? Those are not your people, right? Turns out those were my people because I changed.
I bring this up because whether it's leaving GE to do network marketing, or whether it's leaving one company to be, an entrepreneur or run a nonprofit or whatever, I think what I want to get across to people with what you just said is sometimes you have to, put your ego and the stigma aside. Yes. And say, I'm just going to give this a whirl. I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to go learn about it. Right. Because what if what's the worst that could have happened? You went to this event, you didn't like it, and you don't do it.
Right.
Right. And that's it. And you go back to your awesome, really well-paying job at GE.
That's making me miserable inside.
Sure.
Right. But for sure. I totally agree with your point. And I see that in people. And when I think about how I used to be, it makes it even more important for me to talk about network marketing and to talk about how when you come at it from a place of passion and professionalism, and you are aligned with a company who's top notch, whose values kind of match your own, who has products and services that you believe in, who, maybe does the right environmental or social things to give back. When you find that and you really approach it in a way that is professional and meaningful and going forward, it is a tremendous path to entrepreneurship, because not everybody's got the bright idea. Not everybody's got the new thing, right? Not everybody, especially now, is going to put money into a brick and mortar business.
This gives you a product and a service and a platform that already exists.
Yes. And I didn't have to revamp my life to do it.
So you went to the conference.
Yeah.
And you put your stigma aside. You went to the conference, and what happened? Like, you loved it, you fell in love, and you instantly realized this was you?
Well, it was a 2-day thing. And David Woods, who does it, and he has his own podcast and he does training ever. He is an amazing, amazing, amazing facilitator and trainer. And he really gets to the heart of things. And what I understood was that in looking around the room and seeing all these people, and they're not all bikini supermodels or personal trainers or whatever, right? These are just normal people who are trying to do something to better themselves, to create more financial opportunity for their family, which means more choices, right? Because that's what having more money means, is you have more choices. And everybody was so enthusiastic and open and happy to be there. And it was just such a different vibe than what I was used to. And as I'm learning the skills and I'm listening to what David is saying, because I love the products, right? I partner with Isagenix. I haven't said that yet. I partner with Isagenix. I love the company. I love the products. I love the founders, Jim and Kathy Coover. They're amazing, amazing, amazing people. So that wasn't the issue. The issue was truly the stigma of, am I going to do this full time? And I came back from that event and I sat down with my husband, and we weren't married yet, but I sat down with him and I said, look, I said, I can do this. I said, it's not an issue of education, and these people are no smarter than me and I'm no smarter than them. But it's the fact that this is a legit path. And if you apply yourself and you're dedicated and you learn the skills and you like to talk to people and you're health minded, all of these things that I was, there's no reason why I can't be successful. I said, I'm going to do this. And he said, okay, I support you. And so, but it wasn't like I turned around immediately and quit my job, right? That's different. But I had made up my mind at that point to say, I'm going to do this. I'm going to pursue it. It was a big aha moment for me that weekend.
I also want to just call out your husband for the support of you, because whether it's, your significant other, whether you're married or not, right? That's a big deal when you want to make a career change like this, or a career pivot, is having the support of the person that you're with, because
it's huge.
It's a life-changing moment for you, right? And you're going to leave this world that you've done for 18 years or 17,
whole life.
15 plus years, to do something totally different. You have to have that support of your significant other. So I love how you mentioned that, because I think having that conversation is a really big deal, that a lot of times people don't realize how critical that is to the future of your success. So I love that. So at what point did I'm assuming you started putting a plan together and you're like, I'm going to do this full time and I'm going to leave my Fortune 15 job at General Electric?
Actually, it was a little bit more subtle than that. It was because the great thing about network marketing is that I could have done that, quote unquote, full-time, part-time, and not have ever left my job.
Right.
I could have, because I built my business over the course of 2 years while I was still working at GE, running a global team, doing repair operations, very challenging work. Yet I was still working my business every day. And when I made that decision, I came out of the closet at work because that's what it felt like, right? I wanted to be able to be live on LinkedIn and doing all these things, right? So I went in and I had a conversation with my boss, and GE has something really great called it was called Session D, and then they call it the Spirit and Letter process. It's a compliance process. And so every year you go through all the different compliance things and you talk about them, whatever, and we were doing a roundtable. And so in that roundtable, I told everyone, because one of the rules is that if you're going to start your own business while you're working at GE, right, you obviously can't do it on GE time and you can't use GE equipment, all that stuff. Totally makes sense. So I had my own separate laptop and I had my separate phone, and I was doing things before work and I was doing things after work and on weekends on my time. And so I came out to my boss and my team and I said, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm trying. You guys have seen this change. You've commented on it. So I'm going to start building a side business. But I have my own equipment. I do it on my own time. And if you guys see that there's an issue with me not being there for you, you let me know. And in the meantime, who wants to try a shake right now? And I signed up a lot of GE people, and I still have a huge GE client base, which is terrific. But I actually give my boss and my team a huge amount of credit for them to be very, very supportive of that. And I mean, they were very interested, and they were supportive, and they liked watching my journey, and they would comment on my things and my posts and support. And that was great. And I think that's really important, because there's a lot of businesses and companies that don't support that, and they're very against it. I've had some people blatantly tell me that they can't do that because their job has told them if they start a side business, then they're going to be fired, which I think is terrible and a totally separate issue. But having the support both at home and at work was absolutely critical. And so with network marketing, any network marketing business, there's tools, systems, and processes that you can plug right into, and then you decide how and when you're going to do it. So for me, it was more of, I knew how to do it at that point. It was just 10xing all my effort, right? 10xing who I'm talking to, 10xing enrolling people, 10xing talking to other people about, wanting to do this, and who else is looking for an opportunity to earn extra income, and have those discussions. So I would have stayed longer at GE, but then other forces were changing around me. So when I made the decision to leave and to put that plan in place, it wasn't necessarily me deciding the time was right. But luckily I had a path, and I had something already for me to go into. So.
Yeah, and you also bring up a good point. When you're starting a business, no matter what the business is, and you're an entrepreneur or a small business owner, the beginning is very hard. So having the support, like you said, your significant other and all of your coworkers and friends,
huge,
that were not only purchasing your products and your services, but promoting you on social media. And that's big, right? Because you're really putting in a lot of time and effort into something that's new and trying to get this going. So that's fantastic. So you made the change, you made the big decision, and you left GE. Do you remember your first day full time working for yourself, not at GE? Where did you wake up sitting there and think to yourself, okay, like I did it?
Yeah, it was very strange. I had already been working from home quite a bit at that point, because, like, again, most of my team was global. They were not here in Atlanta. So I already had a very good balance and a very good work from home routine set up, but not logging into my GE computer, not checking my email, not running my production operations calls. That I felt a little orphaned, I'm going to say, because I have a beautiful gas turbine blade up there with my trophy to leave from my team. They had a big party for me, and it was wonderful. And I felt excited, but then there's also that little bit of a letdown, because that something that's been such an important part of your life is now over. And I learned, I grew up in that company. It was good to me. Okay. It was good to me.
It was your life at that point.
It was my life, so many of the skills and the operational mindset and how to do things and how to lead teams, and not only how to manage through things, but how to truly lead people and how to help them become their best selves at what they're trying to do. That was all incredibly important to me. And I learned those skills there, and I use them every single day in my own business. And the fact that I had this to fall back on was huge. It was everything. But yeah, it was a shock. It was a little bit of a shock.
I can imagine. So I'd love for you to share. I mean, you mentioned the name of the company, and hopefully you can share that again with my audience. But you call yourself a lifestyle and health coach. So in a quick couple sentences, what do you do, right? Like, what is Shift Into Health, your business, and what kind of products and services do you offer? Because, I mean, you're clearly passionate about it. You said this literally changed your life, right? I mean, that's why you are here today, because you took advantage of these products and services. You lost weight. You felt better. So what is it you actually do?
So Isogenics is a health and well-being company. They're based out of Candler, Arizona. We're in 24 different countries and markets. And they provide all of the products about, supplements, meal replacement bars, great high quality vitamins, healthy snacks. It's really like a big online health and wellness grocery store. And so what I do is I help people set up their own online health and wellness account. and I help them pick the right either packages or products or services that they need according to their goals. So what happens when somebody wants to work with me, they're either going to reach out to me through my website or through LinkedIn, for example, and say, hey, I saw this. I saw what you do. I'd love to have a conversation. So I have a free discovery session with them. I send them a quick, kind of pre-call evaluation form where I ask them about what are they eating, what are they drinking, what are their daily habits, what are their goals, how committed are they, do they have accountability partners, all these things. And then I share with them a little bit of information about what I do. So we do that kind of before the call so that when I get on the phone with them, we can get really into truly what are their goals and what do they want to achieve and what are they really looking for. And I can make a recommendation to them on what to get. And when they sign up with me, they get, they only pay for the products, all the coaching and tools and services that I provide. That's all part of that. So they're not paying extra. But again, it's a lot of it is just healthy food. It's food, it's nutritional rebalancing. So dealing with, for me, weight loss took so long because I was only trying to deal with it in a traditional way where it said you want to lose weight, you eat less, right? Not necessarily what you eat or you got to work out all this more, right? But it's really about, it's what you're putting in your body, it's the activity level you're doing, and it's also about managing stress, huge, and about dealing with potential toxicity in your body. So I help pick the right system for them to try, and I coach them through it. And we have, I have a 30-day video coaching series that I use. We have Facebook coaching support groups. We use, calls and texts. And generally the first couple weeks is the most contact that I have with somebody. And then after that, it's very simple because it's a simple program. I mean, you replace, 2 regular meals a day with 2 very, very high quality. I mean, this is high quality meal replacement shakes. This isn't just your regular protein off the shelf, right? We're talking about your proteins, your healthy fats, your, good low glycemic carbs, no gluten, no soy, right? Probiotics, prebiotics, all the stuff, the good stuff. So you do that for 2 meals a day, have 2 to 3 healthy snacks, and you have a healthy fork and knife meal. This isn't anti-carb or anti-this or whatever. It's just making smart, high quality choices and making them convenient for people. So it's easy for them to do because everybody's super busy. And unless you're, a fitness competitor, most people are not going to meal prep 3 perfect meals a day and 2 perfect snacks, right? It's not reality. I never did that. I never had time. I never wanted to. So it works and it tastes great and it makes it simple and it's very affordable. So I teach them how to use all that and I give them as much or as little coaching as they need to meet their goals. And they can use all the resources of the groups and they can talk to me. And, it's great. I've had clients since, 2014 and they're still with me today. And then you have some people who use it for a little while and come off and come back, but it's terrific. So that's what I do. Help people get healthy.
You mentioned that the part about GE you liked the most was the people, right? Like you weren't passionate about necessarily gas turbines, but you're passionate about people. And it sounds like the same thing with here, right? Like you're passionate about the people and that's what you really love is you get to help these people become healthy, right? So your product, instead of being at gas turbines, now it's healthy meals and healthy, shakes and things like that. So it sounds like you've been able to kind of continue your development of people passion that you seem to really enjoy, which is awesome. And I want to make sure I share this. We're going to link to, so we have your website, jenniferoknin.com. We'll link to in the show description. We'll also link to your LinkedIn as well if people want to get in touch with you, whether it's to hear about your career journey, to hear about what you do every day with coaching and the products and services, but I want to make sure people can get in touch with you. So you've been doing this full time now for over 3 years. Mm-hmm. What I want to ask you, what has been the biggest thing that surprised you, working for yourself full time, in a positive way, and what has been the hardest thing for you?
I think the biggest thing that surprised me is how much of my own mindset and upbringing and kind of preconceived views about things impacted how I marketed myself and my business to the world. And what I mean by that is most people have a very specific money mindset that is inherited from their parents or their grandparents or whatever. And let's face it, not all of us were raised by financial investors and, who really knew money. And so you inherit those beliefs and talking about money became surprisingly, it was a little bit more difficult for me than I thought in the beginning. And it was hard. I mean, I'm from the Northeast. We don't talk about money. We don't talk about religion. We don't talk about sex. I mean, it's very, very constrained, right? And then all of a sudden you're in an environment where you're seeing, oh, so-and-so made, $6,000 last week or whatever. I'm like, that GE, you don't talk about salary, you don't talk about those things. So money mindset was very interesting. And part of what I do is also I help people who decide that they want to partner with me and mentor with me. I help them open their own Isogenics business. So I mentor and teach people how to do what I do. And having that conversation with people, to be frank, about their money commitment and their time commitment and what it means. And people are always, well, I don't want to sell anything. Really? And I had to face my own fear of that and get over it. And so now I think I can coach people fairly well. But understanding that we sell ourselves every single day, no matter what we do. We sell our personal brand. We sell our ideas. To be heard in meetings. Everything that we do is about sales and influencing people. And so I think once people understand that, and they understand that it's not a threatening thing. I mean, you would, if you were starting, I always ask them this. I said, look, if you were starting a dog walking business, wouldn't you post it on Facebook and wouldn't you tell everybody and wouldn't you want to raise, you would do that, right? Yeah. Okay. So why is this different?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, because I'm selling a product. You were selling your services to walk the neighbor's dogs. What,
What's the difference? Right.
Money mindset for myself and for many people is a big deal, and it influences how people think about things, because you think about residual income businesses and how important they are as a true financial lever to get people out of, very bad financial debt situations or to set themselves up for retirement. People don't understand it. They think the traditional model is, you spend less and you save more. Well, if you're maxed out on credit cards and you got 2 mortgages on your house, or one of your spouses, loses a job, that simple little philosophy is not going to keep food on the table or make sure that you have enough money in retirement, right? So what I love about what's happening now, what I think is positive, is that people do have a more open mind. Like my mind was open to the fact that having a residual income business to help maybe replenish a retirement account that's been wiped out because you've had to raid it so many times to pay for mortgages and weddings and college educations and things, or just to keep yourself covered in your bills or to pay off that one credit card bill. It is an important and it's an invaluable financial tool. So again, that conversation, which I'm super passionate about now, that ended up being something hard for me to talk to people about. And it was all because of these preconceived notions that we all have in our weird little money mindset that comes from really the beliefs that we got when we were growing up as kids.
Right. No, that's interesting. And then what has been something that, so that was like a positive that you figured that out, right? What's something that
it was hard, but it ended up being a positive. Yeah.
What's something that maybe hasn't gone that well that you thought might, maybe you didn't think it was going to be a problem, or you maybe assumed it might be? What is something that's been a challenge?
Oh my gosh. I totally thought I would be so much further along earlier in the journey than I was. I have always been that top achiever and going out and crushing it. I mean, you want someone who crushes it, you go hire Jen, right? Because that's what I did.
Right.
Not so much. There is a definite switch. And I think, look, there's cycles in everything, right? Sales cycles. There's going to be ebbs and flows. There's going to be times when it's going to be raining clients. And there's going to be times when you don't sign up anybody, right? And you have to work through those, and you have to stay consistent. You have to constantly be planting seeds. You need to be investing in yourself. You need to stay investing in yourself, listening to great podcasts like yours. You have to be doing those things and learn how to manage through those times. Because I really thought that with my experience and my personality and my ability, I love people. I love to talk to people, love to help people. I thought I would be much further along earlier than I was. And when I wasn't, like when I got to year 1 and I wasn't where I thought I was going to be, it was a big aha kind of gut check moment. And I never considered stopping.
Yeah.
I knew what I needed to do. And luckily, like when I left GE, I had a plan. And, my husband also has his business, and I'm very, very blessed that I had, savings and all those things. So financially, it wasn't an issue for me. I'm incredibly grateful about that. But again, a lot of what I wanted to do this is I wanted to have something of my own. I wanted to have a business that I could really shape myself. And I wanted to be 100% responsible for my own success, which is kind of a wrong way of looking at it because it's such a team sport. When you're in network marketing, you're in business for yourself, but not by yourself, because you've got a whole team of people around you who are financially linked to you, who you're working with. And so I think learning how to maybe lean on others a little bit more in a different way than I was used to, that was really tough for me too. Because I was just like, well, this person's crushing it and this person's crushing it. Why am I not crushing it? Right? Because you're not always going to be crushing it.
Yeah.
and you have to work hard.
But you learned, and
yeah, of course, yeah.
And you figured it out, which is awesome. So
yeah.
So I just want to say this has been super fun. I learned so much. We could probably talk for a few hours, but I always end the podcast with the same question with every guest, and that is, what is the one thing that's helped you reach your full potential? So why has Jen been so successful, whether it's at GE or now as an entrepreneur? What is the one thing that you would share with my audience that you think has helped you be successful? And if it's two, that's okay as well.
No, I'm gonna go with one. I'm gonna honor the question. I think truly, especially in times like this, you have to get up and you have to truly bring your A game in terms of your attitude and your enthusiasm and your tenacity every single day, even when you don't want to, even when it's hard, because it's hard a lot, especially in times like this. And the one thing that I think for me, I mean, don't laugh, but I mean, I was, varsity cheerleading captain. I was, big in my seat. I was, I've always been a natural leader. And I think that part of that leadership is just that kind of overwhelming ability to still see the goal and to be able to keep that goal in sight and be able to use, your attitude and your tenacity and optimism to say, okay, if this doesn't work, that's okay. We're just gonna take a step back and we're gonna try something different. We're not gonna stop.
You're gonna keep.
We're gonna try something. You're gonna keep going. So you gotta bring that will to keep going, especially as an entrepreneur, because look, a lot of people are not cut out for entrepreneurship. A lot of people need bosses. They need structure and they need bosses.
And that's okay.
And that's fine. Oh my gosh, it's totally fine. But for people who don't, or people who think they want to be an entrepreneur, a lot of people, might start working with me and then they truly realize, you know what, this isn't for me, only because they don't kind of have what it takes to get up and to self-motivate and to be able to do that and to be the boss and to be that type of leader, because it's hard, but it's good hard.
No, I mean, when you're an entrepreneur, you don't have to be at work at 8:00, right? There's no, no one's calling you and saying, hey, Jen, where are you? If you want to sleep till 10, you sleep till 10, but that might not be the right thing to do. Right. So great advice. So thank you. This was so much fun. Again, for everyone listening, we're going to share Jen's personal website and her LinkedIn in the show description, both on YouTube. And then we're going to release this on all major podcast platforms, Apple, Google, Spotify, Anchor, etc. So if you want to share this, you're more than happy to. And if you want to get in touch with Jen to either learn about her amazing career journey, because she mentioned she has multiple mentees, or if you're interested in the products and services she has with Shift into Health, please get in touch. So Jen, thank you for making time. This was a lot of fun.
Nick, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
It was a blast. Thank you. Be well.
Thank you. You as well. Bye-bye. Good night, everyone.